Awesome. Happy Thursday, everybody. We've got Steph out today, so I'm going to be filling in for her to host today's episode. My name is John Massey, and I'm a principal optimization architect on the optics team here at AWS. Today, we're here live with Munish Dabra and Chris Strelzek, and we're going to be talking about managed Grafana and how we can use that as part of our cost observability stack. So as you all know, this is the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock cost optimization on AWS. Chris, Munish, how's your week going so far?
Oh, wonderful. It's getting close to the end of the week, so it's getting more wonderful by every minute. So doing well.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm happy that the kids finally the school started and they're done with the summer vacation.
But Munish, for you all down in Texas, you were saying earlier that you're still in the triple digits. When does that temperature start to kind of drop off for you all? Is that happening soon or not just yet?
Yeah, we've been dealing with this time like 107, and pretty much we're hoping it'll be. I think it start coming down around maybe October, so we have a couple of more months to go.
October, yeah. And how about you, Chris? How's summer been treating you all out there in Michigan?
Yeah, summer in Michigan hasn't been too bad. It's not too crazy hot over here. It's kind of just right. The weather's been kind of nice, so can't complain. We've been enjoying the lakes.
It's awesome. So I think a good way for us maybe kind of get started over here, we'd love to maybe see if you both would kick off with a little bit of like a 1-minute origin story, give a little bit of background on yourself. What do you all do at AWS? I know a lot of our audience maybe knows both of you, already a little bit, but if we could do a little bit of an introduction, that'd be awesome, Chris, and I'd love to have you kind of kick us off.
Sure. So I've been with AWS. I'm a senior technical account manager specialist, and I specialize in cost optimization in AWS. I've been here for about 5 years now, and I came from being an SRE and specifically just being a Unix junkie, Unix Linux junkie. So that's kind of where I spent about 20 years before I came to AWS, and then I came here, did a lot of stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of Linux going on in AWS, but I kind of started to focus on cost optimization as I saw that many customers had problems in controlling cost when they kind of went from their data center deployments to their cloud deployments. So been doing that ever since for about 2 years now.
Awesome. And some of the audience may have seen some of the work that you just did recently on the 24 hours of cost optimization, which was awesome. I'm a huge fan, and maybe we got a couple of call outs and links we can kind of share as we kick off our conversation here too. Munish, how about yourself? What brought you over to AWS? What do you do here? And how did that kind of lead you over to some of these cost conversations?
Yeah, so I'm a principal solution architect, been with AWS for almost 3 years, enjoying every bit of it. And my real role is primarily to help customer build a well-architected solution on AWS. So I'm pretty much all over, but I'm also, but like how I got into the cost is my interest in observability as a whole space. So I'm an observability ambassador, so I get to work with customer on help them build like centralized observability platform using both our AWS native options and the open source. So that's where kind of how I got into Grafana and the interest, and seeing customers are already using it for operational data. Then we start thinking, how we can even they can take advantage of the cost side of it. So just at a holistic. So that's awesome. How I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and both of those backgrounds, like I'm just thinking about that, where the more we focus on detail, those design decisions, that it's all tying back over to the cost side of it, and the more we can understand those details, better we can optimize the workloads. So very, very cool. For today, we're kind of talking about managed Grafana and how that comes over to cost observability. Would you mind maybe just giving a little bit of background for folks that maybe aren't familiar with Grafana? And as we're doing this, I'm curious from the audience, are there folks that are using Grafana today? Are folks familiar with it? And if you're doing something with Grafana now, maybe you could share the projects that you're working on or what the use cases are that you're currently using it for.
Yeah. So I can take that. So yeah, Grafana is an open source monitoring and data visualization platform. So it allows your user, generally our customers or user, to see the operational data, and they can see this data by very interactive dashboard and graphs. So that, and then also not just that, you can query that data from multiple data sources. It doesn't have to be like it could be your on-prem data sitting in the on-prem. It could be on the Kubernetes cluster somewhere or in the cloud, in the AWS cloud. So it allows you to bring that holistic picture of your entire observability. And the nice thing is the data is actually not stored in Grafana, so data stays where it is. So you're just querying that data, and there's a big community around it because open source. I really like the extensible plugin architecture of Grafana. So that's where you can query and visualize the whole variety of data, and you can also build your own data sources. So it's pretty exciting that way.
So very wide range of different connectors that we have, big open source community. One of the reasons I was so excited to have you all on the show today is, I used Grafana, way back when, some of those cost features for the cloud providers that were getting hooked back in was pretty basic. It was really just looking at, some of the cost API stuff and leaving the users to kind of go through and figure out what they want to do with that. Maybe just to set some context for the audience too, Grafana is not really new. How long has it been around for? What are some of the history of Grafana? Anything like that you'd be able to share with folks?
Yeah, so Grafana has been actually, to be honest, I don't know the exact number, but it's been used for almost, like I was saying, around 10 years or more probably.
Yeah.
But like the key, what a change happened is now is Grafana is more have this cloud native architecture. So where like for example, Amazon, we have now a service called Amazon Managed Grafana. So earlier your customer, they have to deploy the server, deploy the database to set it up, all that. But now with the cloud, with our Amazon Managed Grafana, it's a fully managed, highly available, and secure service. They can just start with a click of a button or an API call to have that instance set up for them, which is only we call it workspace, which is a logical isolation it gives them. So it really now, and also now with the cloud, people want to have their infrastructure. A lot of customers have their multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategy. So Grafana fits right in, because it allows you to have that centralized observability for all your environment.
And as a matter of fact, John, it's fully open source compliant. So if you're running Grafana in the dashboard, right, you can easily migrate it into AWS, vice versa, right? As a matter of fact, there's a migrator that we have on the Grafana documentation on our site that will allow you to easily migrate and take Grafana instances that you have set up, say in your data center, and migrate them into managed Grafana.
Perfect. So folks have been doing this before, maybe just in like a local Docker container, and they want to take that and bring it into managed Grafana. Not a big lift. They can just take those templates and just start to bring those back over and use the same connectors and kind of same templating to do that, right?
Yes. So it's a open source compatible, fully open source compatible Amazon Managed Grafana. So we built in collaboration with Grafana Labs. So right now we support Grafana 9.0 version. So, and all your dashboard, whatever you've been working on in your open source Grafana it's all portable. And you get, on top of that, you get enterprise level security. So we have all your data stays within the AWS backbone. So you can use a concept like we have VPC endpoint where you can connect for your EC2 instances to Amazon Managed Grafana all over the AWS backbone. And then you have this plugin. You get like AWS plugin on top of that, and third-party plugin, which you've been using.
Cool. So I just put a link in the chat, and this is of the blog post that you all had published a little bit earlier this year. So folks can go through and kind of click into that. Would you mind giving a little background on the solution that you put together and kind of what's highlighted in that specific blog post?
Sure, I can take that, Manish, if you want. So within the blog post, Grafana is, as Manish mentioned, that Grafana is compatible with plugins, and thus managed Grafana is compatible with some of the services and easily integrates with some of the services that we have in AWS. One of them is Athena. And through Athena, you can actually pull in CUR data. And CUR is, for those that don't know, is the cost and usage report data that allows you to look at a very granular level into your cost and usage. So by granular by resource, right? So you can't do that with, say, for example, with Cost Explorer. So when you pull that data with Athena, and Amazon Managed Grafana can then interface with Athena and then query that data and then visualize that data. So in the setup, we or in the blog, we go through exactly how to set that up. And it's actually just a series of maybe 4 to 5 steps if I were to kind of break them down. Once you have CUR enabled, it's very, very easy to do.
It's awesome. And we've got some other ways to look at kind of CUR data and get cost optimization insights. How is this different? Is it from an audience perspective? Is it the granularity of the data? Can you maybe touch on that one a little bit more, Chris?
Yeah, so there are, maybe not everybody knows, but we have Cost Explorer. That's the built-in AWS cost observability. Cost Explorer is great. It has a lot of built-in features, but it doesn't necessarily allow you to visualize at a very granular level, right? So you can't see, for example, RDS instances or resource IDs. There are other options in this space. One of them is the Cloud Intelligence dashboards, which a team has published from within AWS, and that's based on QuickSight, and it's also pulling in from CUR. It has some other plugins to like Trusted Advisor, but mainly its data is hydrated by CUR, and those are really great dashboards, very mature. They have a lot of dashboards, a lot of work streams now. The only the caveat sometimes is to adoption of the Cloud Intelligence dashboards for customers is perhaps some customers want to stay with open source, and QuickSight is an open source, right? So if they're already using Grafana, or if development teams are already using Grafana, they're going to be a lot more comfortable with using Grafana. And if the mandate from leadership, for example, is to use open source, well, then QuickSight's not an option, but Grafana may be an option, and they can quite easily do and replicate the same thing within Grafana.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just about how in the AWS we believe in that flexibility and providing the option to the customers. So that's where Grafana fits in. It's just they're already monitoring their infrastructure and application performance monitoring in the Grafana. So it makes sense to have the cost dashboard also there. And I talked to many customers. They've been asking about it, like how to do it in easy. Can we get some dashboard? And we do have some dashboard which when the customers kind of launch the Grafana, we have some curated dashboard. And Chris will also talk about some of the other dashboard and the new project we're working on to make it easy for customers.
I think that's one of the coolest parts about this is that, we obviously want the workload context alongside any of the cost details. So if someone's using Grafana and they've got all this great application data, they're tracking requests, they're tracking, different metrics or performance details of whatever the workload is doing. Now kind of, in that same spot, they can pull all this cost detail in, and beyond just having cost detail, this is all that extra logic on top of that to help them actually understand and interpret the data too. So that's just super cool. We had one question that came through here that says, what's the price difference between Grafana and QuickSight? And not sure, Chris, I would put you on the spot a little bit, but anything that maybe you could share there, or even just kind of broadly about the models themselves.
Yeah, so they're priced based on usage or users. So Grafana, for example, if you stand up a workspace, it's going to depend how many users you have accessing it and what permissions they have. So, for example, admins are priced differently than the users with the capability of viewing only, right? But it's in my opinion, a pretty small cost, right? Admins are $9 a month. So if you just have one person viewing it, it's $9 a month, right? If you're not using Grafana Enterprise. And this solution will just run on the regular Grafana version, not Grafana Enterprise. As a matter of fact, I have a little demo in a couple minutes here that I'll kind of outline that. So the dashboard itself, if you're running just for observability, will be very cheap. If it's just you and you're an admin, it's just $9 a month. With QuickSight, they're typically for enterprise support customers. It also depends on how many users are accessing it. And I can't recall off the top of my head how much that is per user. But the cloud intelligence dashboards typically for even large customers run only hundreds of dollars per month. So it's not a very heavy lift for larger customers.
Yeah, so I'm thinking through maybe a couple things just to recap what we've talked about now. A couple different benefits to using Grafana for doing some of this cost visibility, where cost advantage, in some cases, depending on how folks are using things. If there's a preference internally for the organization to use things like open source solutions versus some of the other alternatives that are out there, some BI tools. And then 3, maybe if folks are already using Grafana today for some kind of application visibility stuff, they can just natively start pulling these things in and take advantage of some of the pre-built templates that you all have shared out there with the community. Anything that I missed there? Is that a fair kind of recap?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And generally, like when I see customer comparing QuickSight and Grafana, pricing is not the criteria. Generally criteria is, as you said, like because there's a learning curve for every tool organization have. So organization prefer to have the tool they already have, and if that's a good enough tool, they want to just because you need to also building at the enterprise level, you need to also integrate with your SSO or a SAML identity provider. So all that adds to the complexity. While if you already have with Amazon Managed Grafana, it just makes it very easy to integrate with all that.
Absolutely, yeah. Make it simple, remove some of those friction points, so you can kind of just jump straight into being able to take advantage of the capabilities. I'm just going to kind of plus one, Frank's comment here, making the dashboards by hand, not a pleasant task. And, couldn't agree more, we want to jump to the insights and, take advantage of the stuff that's already out there and created. Yeah. And maybe, Chris, that's a good opportunity for us to kind of segue in and take a peek at this stuff and actually see what it looks like. Would we be able to spin up that demo if I pop this up on the screen now?
Yeah, go for it. I totally agree. I think that was Frank that mentioned that. As being a person that creates dashboards, it's sometimes frustrating, right? You have to come up with the queries, you have to come up with all the logic and how you want to visualize it. It's a tedious task. So we try to make this easy. And one thing I love about Grafana is that importing new dashboards, and I'll kind of show that in a second, is super easy, right? It's just a JSON file you're taking in. So the Grafana has a concept of workspaces, and I mentioned it's price per workspace, right? So if you have multiple workspaces, you're going to have more charges, right? But a workspace can hold many dashboards. So I'll just kind of jump into how a workspace is configured in Grafana. And basically, Manish mentioned that there are data sources, there's authentication that you need to configure, and that's all the same with Grafana, right? So it's easily configurable with Identity Center. You can use SAML if you have your own IDP. And all of this is, you can stand up a workspace with CloudFormation as well. So we're working, as a matter of fact, on a template to help users stand up a workspace quite easily with the data sources needed for this dashboard. So if I go into the actual dashboard, and let's see, there we go. I will just, how much time do we have? So in the interest of time, I'll go a little fast here, but if any questions pop up, just feel free to stop me.
And we just put the GitHub repo in the chat for folks that are kind of following along and want to see a copy of that JSON that Chris was just talking about.
Yeah. Yep. And that GitHub, and it's all cited in the blog as well. So if you read through the blog, you'll eventually get to GitHub where you need to actually import the dashboard. So this is the actual dashboard, and with the dashboard that we've created that you can download and easily import, you get several different views, right? Once you hook this into Athena, you get a summary view. So this is kind of what Cost Explorer gives you, right? So you can use and look at its time series data, so you can look at it for the last X days or months. And when you switch, all of the views will switch for you, right? So you get a good view of the summary of your cost for this account, or if this is running at the payer for many accounts, right? So you can do this at the payer, or you can do this at the linked account level as well. And then aside from the summary view, we kind of did some examples of what you could map out as far as costs for various services. So you can do, and you can do it for EC2, right? So we'll, in a second here, we'll pop up EC2 amortized costs. And this is a demo account, so I don't necessarily have any savings plans or reserved instances, but we table those so you can see your active reserved instances as well. And for storage, because we want to also not only just give you the data, or so you can view the data and view your cost and usage, but we also can view insights as like cost optimization insights. So we have a query here that runs and it allows us to see if we migrate from GP2 to GP3, how much money will we save? Obviously, this is my test account, so I don't have a lot of money here, but if you have many accounts, it'll show you by account how much money you're able to save here. There was a question also, I'll jump around a little bit, about Grafana costs. So I did want to visualize that too. I wanted to visualize how much is this dashboard itself actually costing us. So I did a query and mapped it out here basically on the workspace itself, all right, because Grafana cost is included in CUR as everything else is. And you can see that in the month of July, it's $9 because I'm only one user. I don't really have any other users accessing this, so it's $9. And again, if you have more users, if you have 20 more users and they're just viewers, that's 20 times 5 plus the 9, right? So it's relatively inexpensive. So how does this all work behind the scenes? Really, all of these are just CUR queries that you can view, inspect, and edit. So if I wanted to edit this dashboard, right, I have the CUR query right here. I can take this CUR query and modify and take away some of these variables and put it in Athena and run it against my CUR data just the same. And I can visualize it in table format. I can slice and dice it how I want to visualize it here as time series or as table data with different types of charts, right? All the standard Grafana stuff you would be doing on perhaps your metrics for EC2 or metrics coming in from CloudWatch, etc. Right? So you can do all of this against the CUR data and add to it as you see fit.
And Chris, Munish, one question that just kind of came through. I know with Grafana, we could take some of these dashboards and we can embed them externally outside of just the URL that we're accessing them through right now. But we got a question here wondering if we can access any of that data via API from the Grafana instance. Any comments on that one?
So we do have Amazon Managed Grafana does support a HTTP API. So where you can set up create a new dashboard, for example, configure new data sources. So you can do some of that. You can create snapshots, set up the users, and like a more governance, setting up the teams. So I just sent the link. Maybe you can, John, if you can send it to the
yeah.
And I'm just showing the screen right here where you would set up your API keys. Yeah. And again, important to differentiate what you set up in CloudFormation, for example. You would set up the whole workspace, and then you would use the API key to then set up your dashboards if you wanted to set it up automatically or programmatically to be exactly the same, right? Or in CloudFormation, you can just use a Lambda to make those API calls as well.
And we just put that link out there around using those Grafana APIs for folks, and that's in the chat as well if you want to be able to go through and click on that.
Yeah, and I just want to add, we Amazon Managed Grafana also support infrastructure as code, as a best practice. So you can use Terraform or you can use CloudFormation to create a new workspace and configure all the other configuration related to workspace. So that's also.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to point out, because I do want to highlight how easy it is to import any type of dashboard, including our dashboard, right? So the dashboard, you can just, we just export it right through here, right? And it's just a JSON file, basically. So we can view the JSON file. This is all the dashboard is on GitHub, right? So you're taking the JSON file, and when you're going into dashboards right here, you're just importing it right here, and you're uploading the JSON file, naming it. You do have to have the data source configured, right? And that our blog goes through that. And eventually, once we have the CloudFormation template out on GitHub, that will just set that up for you automatically. But it's that easy. You just plug it in right here and import it, and off you go.
So for folks that maybe aren't as familiar with Cur or aren't as familiar with Grafana, just high level basic steps would be getting the Cur, exporting over into a location, connecting the data source, back over to the Grafana instance, and then just uploading that JSON file. That's basically the whole definition for all the visualizations and everything that you have inside the dashboard. And then they're pretty much off to the races. Is that fair?
Yeah, some low-level steps. Obviously, you have to have Cur enabled, and there's a CloudFormation template to have Cur hydrate Athena. All right, our Presto serverless Athena query service. So once you have all of that done, exactly what you said, those are the steps to really get that done. And as far as the dashboard, you can start editing it with your own data. And if you do need to know a little bit more about how to query that data, then we have the AWS Cur query library on the well-architected labs. I'm not sure if you have a link to that, John. If not, we can put it up on the show notes after.
Yeah, let me go ahead and put that one out right now. And I'm a super fan of the Cur query library. It's just unbelievable resource. I'm going to paste that here, and I also want to share out that link to the 24 hours of optimization, because if you're looking at any of these dashboards, or you're looking at the Cur queries, seeing these different dimensions, and you're curious, hey, does this, what is the path to optimizing the workload? It's a great resource where, you could take Chris's example here of looking at storage and then double click into what the optimization patterns are there, usage reduction, IOPS allocation, all those types of things. So another kind of great resource. And while I'm sharing these, we got another one here from Frank, and curious if you'll have, response back for that one, but accessing the database of the Grafana instance. So we've got the data source and then any kind of database that Grafana is using. Is that something that's accessible to folks themselves, or is that kind of a more of a behind the scenes?
So I can take that one. So Amazon Managed Grafana as a fully managed serverless offering we have. So you don't have access to the database itself, but then rest assured, all your data, mainly two things users are storing there. One is the dashboard, right? Other is the alerting rule. If they want to configure any alerting on certain metric which breach the threshold. So those two things are encrypted with the KMS key. So they are fully secure, and even the data in transit is also encrypted. But as a managed service, just like other services we have, you don't have access to the database itself.
Yeah, and important to differentiate database and data source, right? You have access to your own data sources. It could be coming from other data sources, CloudWatch, in our case, Cur, right, Athena. But the database you don't have access to. Now, one thing to point out, though, when you do configure this, there's two ways of accessing it, the Grafana dashboards, right? There's a public link where you can go into your AWS cloud and access your Grafana dashboards. It's just served publicly, or you can run it inside your VPC, and you can access it through endpoints. So that way you can keep it just localized in your VPC and access it from servers in your VPC.
Yep. I think there's another follow-up question. I can take that. So yeah, you don't get charged for storage. I think Frank was asking. You're really paying for the Grafana workspace, as Chris was mentioning earlier. So there's a monthly, and you only pay for, just want to clarify, that active users. So if you have 10 users, but only 2 of them actually log into the Grafana workspace, so you only going to pay for those 2 active users.
Awesome.
Really flexible pay as you go model. So.
And as we start to kind of come to the end, the 30 minutes. It always goes by fast for me every single time. And this is just so cool. I want folks to be able to have access to that blog link that we shared earlier to go through and kind of test this out and try it on their own. Anything else, Munish and Chris, that you kind of wanted to share out as a call to action in our last, 20, 30 seconds here?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think for me, we continue to iterate on this dashboard, so we're going to continue to adding more queries as Cur queries are added to the Cur query library, which I mentioned. We're going to add queries in here. And we're going to continue to iterate on the CloudFormation template and also potentially do Terraform. So it's even much easier for users to set this up.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you both for joining us today, kind of sharing all of this. As always, awesome solution. And I know the community is really excited to play around with this as well. Next week, Steph is going to be back on the show with Maddie talking about optimization opportunities from the curve. So digging in a little bit deeper and a great complement to this session. Manish, Chris, thank you again very much. This was awesome. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having us.